how do I hire for this role and then use AI to help make their job easier versus replace. But I think you'd be shocked just by how much money you could make, slash how many opportunities you could line up for yourself by being honest with people.
I always like to start these things with a quote. And today I have, when everything seems to be going against you, remember that the plane takes off against the wind, not with it. Henry Ford. Today I have Eric Harrison with me, co-founder and CEO of Thrive, which is a community for founders, to talk a little bit more about going against the wind every single day, because that's what entrepreneurs do. Eric, how are you?
I'm good, man. I appreciate the intro and I appreciate the invite. I geek out talking anything business life, entrepreneurship. So I appreciate you asking me to be on here.
Fantastic. Now, let's first we'll go into exactly what you do and how you created Thrive and what that is. Can we start with the journey? Like, where did you start? How did that look like, and how do we get to today?
Yeah. So now run a pretty cool community, but I definitely didn't start there. I actually started my first company when I was in college several years ago with my current co-founder. It was a change management consultancy called Census. So we would basically go into these like 200 person mid-market businesses and build mission obsessed teams was pretty much the pitch. It was a ton of fun. Did it like 2.5 years total. About a year in, we got it over 6 figures, and a year and a half in is when we hit that inflection moment where I could sit down and accept the fact that I had no idea what I was doing. Didn't know how to manage people. I didn't know how to hire. I didn't know how to fire. I didn't know how to manage money. And we were running like a pretty serious business. And I was feeling pretty much the full weight of that. And I realized pretty quickly my family didn't totally understand. My friends certainly didn't understand and weren't doing those types of things. So every decision I made, I just kind of felt like it was in total isolation and we never knew if the path we were on was the right one. And it was really isolating, as a lot of entrepreneurs know. And the long story short is did not figure it out. I ran the whole thing out of cash like 2.5 years in. Now I came out of that experience saying, I do want to be a founder. I just don't believe I'm ready. So I took a job in Philly at this startup and packed all my stuff in my car from Illinois, left college. I moved out there, started working in sales there, and it ended up being like an awesome experience for me. I spent almost 3 years there, helped them grow to over 1 million in revenue. I helped them grow the team quite a bit. Like we really were building something out of nothing, which is really cool. And it taught me a lot about how a startup should work and how managing people and cash should work, which I just didn't have in that first company. Our thing was like we only sold to huge tech, and I would tell my boss, who's the founder, after work, I like this job a lot. I think I'm pretty good at it. I don't totally relate to the people we sold to just because I have never built a 300-person tech company and probably won't ever. I geek out talking to startup founders and small business owners and earlier stage entrepreneurs. And after work, I just started doing these Zoom calls that kind of led me to learning more about people. And I heard them start to use the same words I would use to describe my first experience. This is insanely tough. It's super isolating. I never know what I'm doing. My family doesn't get it. My friends don't get it. And I was like, holy shit, these people are just like me. This is actually pretty cool. And I didn't have anything to sell them, but that's kind of what led me to like seeing this problem that entrepreneur loneliness and isolation is real. And it wasn't unique to me at all.
You're right, because that specifically like that last piece, if you don't have like a several family members that run businesses, it is extremely difficult to explain or to portray, paint that picture of how the weight, how big that weight is, and what are your thoughts. And it might sound irrational once you say them out loud, but in those moments, you don't know how you don't know what you're doing. You're thinking about it. You want to do the right thing, and you're talking and asking them for an advice from someone that never done it, has no idea or no will or interest, and you're kind of getting the wrong feedback. Now, you said you were doing this fantastic job in Philly that taught you a lot, but you weren't talking with the people you wanted to talk with. How did you first start balancing, in essence, a side gig?
Yeah, great question. Because I worked for a startup in like a leadership of the company role, my 9 to 5 wasn't even really a 9 to 5. Like I get there way before 9, it's stay way after 5, and you have to work on the weekend. So it was tough to do that. I was looking for advice on this, and I found like if I want to start working on your startup, I'm like, I don't get home until 7 some days. Like I don't, I got to figure this out. So what I started doing was, and we worked in office every day, so it wasn't even like I could like take calls from my desk on this or anything. I started just saying I'm going to do two a night. Like I'm going to try to schedule 2 calls a night. I'll be very open with these people that I have a full-time job. That is why I need to do it at night. If that doesn't work, I guess we can't chat. And people were like really receptive to that. And they weren't super long conversations, like 20, 30 minutes. And I found, okay, I could start to do more of these. Okay, some of these people are actually receptive to talking on the weekends. Some of them will talk before work, like 7 a.m. So I started just like fitting them in to the point where it reached a point where I would get off a call at 8 a.m. because I needed to walk to work, and I'd be bummed that I had to like go to work and not do this. And that's even though it wasn't making money and it wasn't a business. And that's when it clicked for me, like maybe it's time to go do something else.
So it feels like you're saying when it comes to starting a side gig, if anybody's thinking of that, your experience was there are some limiting beliefs there, but you can be honest with people. You can tell them, I do have a full-time job. This is a side gig, and they were receptive of it. The next one, which I think is more important and very uncomfortable for a lot of people, is you were flexible and they were flexible, and you were open to some weekends and they were open to some weekends, or like you said, going before work. So these are the things that, and you also had a limit, 2 Zoom calls. I can successfully without impacting my full-time job. That's like the main thing, and I want to see this works. So I'm balancing both, but properly, like with respect to both of them. I can commit to this many hours here. I've committed my full time, and it sounds like that is kind of the if so if you have to do it again, that's kind of the approach. Be honest with people, have limitations so you can complete both, and then use that as the way to see if this is what you really want to do. And you're saying you got to the point where, okay, I really don't enjoy what I do full time. Nothing wrong with it. It is this is what I'm passionate about. What are the steps you're taking to switch from a full time from a side gig and making the side gig the main thing?
That's a great question too. I think one is this conversation you have with yourself of like, which one do I love more? Which one do I care about more? Which is really important. And I think for me, when it was like, I'm bummed to go to this job that I used to like, that is when I was, okay, whether I go do this thing or not, like I gotta, life, I'm a believer like life's too short to not work where you want to work. And if you're bummed out on Sunday, like you're in the wrong job. So I think that conversation of like, am I mentally ready to move on is important. And then, I think people overcomplicate this a little bit, especially if they work in a startup where they feel like they're super essential. Like, is everyone going to hate me? Like, am I going to rock the boat too much? Anyone who started a company knows like the people are probably the hardest part. And this stuff happens. Like people have their own lives, they have their own aspirations. Um, I think a good boss will be, pending you're not like, I'm leaving tomorrow and you can deal with that. I think they will work with you a lot of times on stuff like this. And you got to do what's best for you to a degree, right? So I think candor is really important and not making it just like, I'm leaving to go do this full time thing. I always tell my co founder, I think it would be awesome if employees quit Thrive one day to go start a company. Like that to me is super cool. I would, as someone who did that, I think it'd be pretty hypocritical for us to be like, no, 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 please don't go start your own company. That to me is cool. That's like people are growing and challenging themselves in new ways and like ultimately landing on what they're passionate about. So I think just being like honest with yourself and honest with your employer, this is what I'm super passionate about. I want to help through this transition. Like again, I'm not like working on this during my full-time job. Like what can I do to make this the smoothest thing possible for you?
Right. I think that is the key in both things, the transparency and trying to make it the smoothest thing possible, in not like not being open about it and making it harder for the new clients that you're having and for having a bad rep when you're leaving that startup. Because startup, again, like eventually you are in a startup. Eventually you have your own, so you don't want
Yeah,
those complications. But of course, people do, they have to grow. Like that is the beauty of it. They have to grow. And if you have
absolutely.
a company culture that is around that, it's fantastic. Now, you're moving into this new concept of Thrive. Tell me, how does that work? What is it?
Yeah, great question. So community for founders, and there are a ton of communities out there that can all mean very different things, of course. Our specialization is really putting people into these hand placed peer groups of 6 folks I think about good communities a little bit of the opposite of like a standard networking event. A lot of times you walk into a networking event, there's like 100 people there, everybody's got on a name tag. You don't know who to talk to, and you're just kind of like meandering your way through the event. They're not designed for vulnerability. If you couldn't make payroll last week, you certainly aren't going to say that to somebody that you met 30 seconds ago at a networking event. If you're not paying yourself, like these aren't the conversations you're going to have. And a lot of times everybody's just trying to sell each other stuff. They're like trying to navigate, like, can I find my ICP? Can I hand out a couple business cards? I've just never left a networking event thinking, damn, that was like the best use of my hour ever. I'm so fired up to be a founder. And I think a lot of people don't. They just feel like they have to go to them. That to me is like networking. Community is all about being so vulnerable about your challenges that people are obsessed with trying to help you find a solution. It's about learning things about your peers that you would never learn from looking at their LinkedIn profile or never learn in like 30 seconds at one of these pop-up events. And we design these peer groups to have those types of conversations that I think founders don't normally get to have. Should I fire this person? Should I hire this person? I didn't pay myself this week. Like, and I want to talk about how that feels. Like, I'm going through a divorce with my business partner. Like, how do I navigate that? I got to fire this tough client that's been with me for a long time. Those are conversations that you just don't get to go home to your household and have a lot of times. So we do these peer groups of 6 people who meet on Zoom twice a month for 90 minutes. And they're really designed around like that intimacy. We push people like bring the toughest thing you're up against and be super transparent. And I think like time to vulnerability is really cool in these. And the outcome is not only like I solved business challenges, I think to a degree, like you're happier. I didn't realize how much I didn't have friends who were founders until I started Thrive. Like I've got so many now that I call on a regular basis, that I text for advice the same way I text my co-founder. And it's one of those things you don't realize you need until you have it. And then you're like, I don't know how I could operate my company without this network now that I have. So we just really push them to get vulnerable, help them solve each other's most pressing business challenges in these conversations, and have the hard conversations to where, they don't have to pretend like they've got it all figured out. Like it's okay to tell people what's actually on your mind.
Right, right. And so it feels like there is a component of you tried a bunch of networking events and you always felt like something is not clicking here at all. And you're right with, I think in networking events, the most outspoken, charismatic person, doesn't matter if it's a good or bad business, doesn't matter if it's an owner or a sales rep, that's the person that, because you don't know everyone, so everybody kind of wants to talk. That doesn't mean that is the person you need to talk to, have those conversations, or if it leads to anything. And the way that you're describing Thrive is the first thing I noticed was like it's not about selling to each other, which that's what I hate the most. When someone's like, it's a networking,
Yep.
like it's not a networking event. This is like no one wants to know anything about me. They just want to kind of evaluate and check and qualify. That is that is the first thing that I can like, okay, yeah, that's good. So you don't have to sell to each other and you can actually
My
talk to
favorite My favorite of those would be I would get handed like a lawn mowing services company card, and I'd hand it back and be like, I live in an apartment complex. Like I do not maintain the lawn. They're like, no, 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 take it, take it. I'm like, I'm not. You're handing this to the wrong person. I don't own a home. Like wrong guy.
Now, you also have I think something that you mentioned off camera, which was you do courses because you didn't figure out how to do it. Was that part of the reason why you didn't create a course, you created communities?
Yeah, I think so. I've always had this weird like love hate relationship with courses, and I think it's mostly due to trust. You get to I don't know, over the past years got to know a lot of startup founders, and it's funny, like sometimes the people that are the best at what they do are terrible at coaching or terrible managers because they're just like they're great at the thing, they don't know how to get it out of their brain and in a format for other people. And the inverse, a lot of times people are amazing coaches. Let's say you're like a sales coach, there are some people that I know that are like amazing sales coaches. They can say all the right things, they're super motivating, they couldn't sell if their life depended on it. Like they just do not have that like innate ability. They know how. They're just not like wired that way. They're actually like a better teacher than they are a doer. And I think that's my struggle with courses is like I never know if the person that's teaching it is credible enough to teach it. And to a degree, like a lot of it is recorded content, right? I think the a lot of times real learning comes when you can like follow up and ask questions and you can feel like it's super specific to your situation and you just yap at somebody, right, for 20 minutes and then they say 5 words, but they're like exactly what you need to hear. You don't get that in a course environment without, probably paying an upsell or more money to get access to the person who wrote it. So I just don't love the model, but I don't think everybody that does it is like wrong.
Right. Like I don't think everyone in kind of what you're saying is like I don't think everyone here is a grifter or a scammer. It's just that there is some that are really good at coaching as opposed to actually doing the thing. And you've met from your experience, I've met a lot of great people that are fantastic, but I couldn't teach. Like there's no way sit and watch me, sure, but there's no way I can kind of teach you all these things.
Yeah.
But my problem with courses is it feels like if you read the books that they kind of extract the information, you will get to the same thing. It may be a little bit slower, just a little bit slower, but eventually it gets to the point where you were saying of that feedback loop. You do it, you get feedback. Is it good? Is it bad? With a person or with process or whatever you do. But for me, it's the courses are a digested version of several books, and I can just read them, understand the core concepts, go apply them because that's what the course at the end will be. It's recorded. Oh, you learned it now, go apply it. And if there's something unique that I've never heard or read, then maybe. But otherwise,
Yeah.
yeah. Now, in your community, you have this six peer person. You said you have stage and revenue qualification, personality, business model. How does that qualification work? How do you make it so that someone, yes, this is the group that you will be a part of?
Great question and an important one to me. The entire value is getting matched with the right people. Um, it's almost like thinking about living on the street of these people. When you move into a home, like you want to probably have a good relationship with your neighbors and you'd love to be friends with them. You don't know if you will be. You have no idea if you have the same interests, but like you've got a kid like my daughter's age, like all that kind of stuff. So we really take that into account. I think the stage is the big one, and the personality is the other big one. You can't put somebody doing like 1 million in revenue with somebody who quit their job 4 days ago. Their challenges are just way too different. One of them's dealing with people and scaling and ops and process, and the other person's thinking about how to get their first handful of customers and pay themselves. And not that either of those are wrong or bad, they're just different. So I try to match people one on stage where they are truly peers. The second one, which is important, is that you could have 6 people at the same stage that would never be friends in real life because they're like so personally different from one another. So we take that into account. We interview everybody before they come into a Thrive and vet them and approve them. And we only approve people where I could think about our conversation and say they would be an easy person to get into a peer group because like it was a really fun conversation. It was like we had good banter. I thought they were personable. They asked good questions. Business makes sense. So I think about that a lot. Like, would these people have the same interests in real life? Like, are they on a similar life journey? A 21-year-old who's running their first company is very different with like doesn't own a home, doesn't have kids, doesn't have like a ton of commitments. Is very different to me than like husband or wife, couple kids in their 30s. Like that's just a different startup experience. So I try to really think about those things to where they can get in a room and say, wow, like you're actually very much like me. I hope we can become friends.
That's nice. And I think the last piece that you mentioned, when I had my daughter, so I'm starting this thing and now I'm a parent and I'm listening to these advices and to that point of how different. I'm like, there's no way I can apply what you're saying. There is no morning routine, my friend. There is not like that just doesn't work. And I understand it like 5 years ago, but not today. And to your point, what you were saying, it is true. I've met with a lot of people that same stage, maybe similar business, but we're so different personality that you will maybe get through like a 30-minute call once a week, but never truly, because like you were mentioning in your goal is to be vulnerable. I will never be vulnerable in front of someone like that because you don't see things in the same perspective. Life is very different for me, different kind of goals and aspirations, and it's important to match them on personality, not just on stage and revenue, because it's the second piece. And like I said, if someone is giving you like, I'll wake up in the morning and do that, and I feel fantastic, like, oh, it doesn't happen. Like it's very different.
Right,
Now,
right.
something interesting that you mentioned here, which I don't know if kind of what's the reaction that you get, but when you try to match people or when you're trying to do your groups, how do people react when when you're trying to kind of do this properly and they would say something like, well, Eric, I don't know, man, you don't have that much life experience. You're not in your 60s or 50s, gray hair. You haven't done this so many. How can you tell me who I need to be matched with? You don't have that many years of experience in running companies and businesses?
That's a great question. I mean, I think it comes down to like what's the skill set required to do this. And to me, it's like you have to be you're a connector in this. If you're somebody in my role, I think like your main skill set is that you're a connector. You can meet somebody, and I think I told you this in our first conversation. My like thing is anytime I meet somebody, I've just got names going through my head, like, oh, who should they meet? Who are they? Who do they remind me of? Like, oh, you live in this spot. Like, I wonder what your address is. I probably know somebody that lives 5 miles from you that you should get coffee with. You could run a company for 50 years and not have that skill the same way that like I don't have the skill of managing 500 people. I'd probably be the worst person in the world to do that. But I do have the connector skill, just because I think I meet so many people, and I think I have like a pretty good memory. I don't know how, we're at the stage where like I don't have 1,000 members, so like that without a good process won't last forever. But right now I talk to some of these folks and look at their data and try to be as like thoughtful as I can. Something with this too is I started doing this like halfway into Thrive. I used to like match, I'd be really sure about it, and then like boom, same day, here's your group. Now, similar to the way I write, I will match, I will let it sit for a day. I will come back and read it again and look at it. And I will sometimes like be like, I don't think I see that the way I saw it yesterday. Like, let me swap this around. And I write that way too. I just kind of come back to it, let it sit, and make sure I can. That's the thought. So I don't know. I think power to them if that's their opinion, but yeah, I think I just have the connector skill set, and at least that's what I'm pretty
Right.
confident in. So yeah,
And that is the most useful thing that you try to do in achieving that because you're not mediating. You're not a mediator in the meeting. That's not how it works. It's basically a conversation. My goal is just to bring the right people in the same room. When we're talking about bringing all these people in the same room, what are some of the misconceptions of running businesses or teams that you had when you started sitting and listening and watching? Did you start to pick up and like, wow, I completely had that wrong in my mind?
it's a great question. One, I think like I'm somebody who is continually trying to get better at like hiring and managing people. And in both companies, like I thought I was beyond this when I started Thrive, and like I still have challenges with it. This acceptance that like no one who is your employee is going to care about this or work as hard as you. You can't treat them like they're a second you. If something takes you 4 hours because you know your company so well, you know exactly how to do it, you can't assign it to them saying, well, this is 4 hours of work. I don't understand why we're 6 hours in and it's halfway done. Like you can't expect people to be you or have the same skill set, or and sometimes you don't want them to have the same skill set. That's why you hired them.
Yeah.
Let them do your thing. So that is like a big one. It's just people, you can't hire two of you. Like it sounds good on paper, and like it just doesn't really ever work out that way. Like employees will get frustrated, the employer gets frustrated, and it leads to like a bad culture. I think the second big one is mistake I made in the first company, didn't make it in this one, thankfully, is that I think if you're starting a company, you have to get good at sales, and like you have to be the one that sells what you're doing, at least up to a certain point. Um, I talked to a lot of like pre-revenue founders that will say, like if I hire somebody I'm interested in contracting out, so he's great at sales to just go out and sell this for me. And it almost never works. Like they can't pull what's in your brain out if you don't know how to communicate it, how the hell would they? Like, to a degree, I think account executives and great sales reps are not mind readers. Like they have a playbook and they're good at selling, and they can memorize that playbook and go execute it. And I tell people all the time, I think you'd be shocked just by how much money you could make, slash how many opportunities you could line up for yourself by being honest with people. I have no customers. I'm really good at this thing. Like, I'm trying to get better at the value prop. I think you'd be a good fit for these reasons. Some people think it's awesome that they get to be your first customer and are willing to like take a chance on you and the vision. And that vision is the most important part of that. I think people make a lot of money communicating their vision to people. That is something a sales rep does not have and will never communicate as well as you. You don't have to be good at sales to know this is what I'm trying to build and can talk about that. And people will eat that up, in my opinion.
I think it's so um it logically just makes a lot of sense because someone will say, okay, you started your own company, you don't need to work like exchange dollars for hours. So it would make sense that you are that like a product developer or operational and you would hire a sales rep. But like you've mentioned, it almost never works because it ties to the first thing that no one can care that much. They have different things they want and aspirations. So this is an agreement that you will get that much money for doing this. You need to do that pretty good, but that thing is very well defined. And as a founder, as a CEO, you kind of go off script once you notice an opportunity. A sales rep, an account manager doesn't have that need. They're like, no, no, I need to just do this very, very well, and everything's good. Like you mentioned, like you have these opportunities lined up, and when you're honest with people, if they are truly for the long run in business, they notice opportunities. You do know, okay, diamond in the rough. Let's see if it's true. If it is, I struck gold, very happy with this. And the other side is very happy because someone validated their idea. It's true. So it's nothing wrong to say this is the first, second, third, fifth, or whatever. I'm trying a new concept. I've done it with my clients many times. I would show them like this is a beta thing I'm testing for myself. And I'm planning on rolling it out. What do you think? Like it's not even, and some of them were like, no, not gonna work out. And some were like, interesting. I always thought of that one. So that honesty, transparency is crucial. But I do agree. Like you should never outsource your almost never. You're selling in the beginning. Like you should do it because you get the feedback a lot faster. Now, when we were talking about misconcept, there has to be some on the other side. What are some of the wins that you've heard that are um unusual? Like it blew your mind, like wow, that happened, and that small thing led to a massive win, and you take that story and you try to apply it in your life.
That's a great question. It almost always comes back to people being like mega vulnerable with one another about like what they suck at and what they want help with. And I will connect people all the time, even if they're not in the same peer group. Oh, you said this, you should meet this person. Like, I actually think you guys would get along really well for XYZ reason. And I'll make that connection. Like, the best thing I can do is put them in the right room with each other. And I hope the conversation is valuable. I hope they get something out of it. Doesn't always happen. Um, I've had it happen before where they came back and they're like, dude, this guy like ruled. Thank you so much. 2 weeks later, like these two guys were like, we started a coffee company together. I was like, what? Like, are you serious? And he's like, yeah. Like we both like are obsessed with it, love it. Like our business is in a good spot. This would be like a cool little project for us. I was like, I can't, is this like a joke? Like, no, like we built a coffee company. I was like, dope. Like that's what's awesome. So just stuff like that, you don't know what can happen out of people being vulnerable and people saying what their intentions are and what they want out of stuff. Like cool, they're making money on it. Like it's not like life changing money yet, but it's a cool little fun project for them.
And it's interesting because you see that win through Thrive that two people are now co-founders, which it's better than the alternative, which is going on Reddit and trying to find co-founder for something and then hoping that they have the same values and the same kind of thing. At least here you spoke with
Yeah.
someone in the right kind of tonality, if you will. Now, something that you also kind of mentioned, and you had a cool, interesting definition of entrepreneur versus entrepreneurial. What is the difference there?
Yeah, great question. This is like a fun part of the pre-convo as well. I think people who are entrepreneurial are these people who everyone kind of like sees them in the distance. Like they write on LinkedIn, like everything's great. Like here's all this advice. Like do these 5 things, and like you'll be really well off. And they post really sick content, and they've got like a $10,000 camera probably, and like all their stuff just looks amazing, and it puts these like doubts in your mind. Like wow, man, like that person's so much more legit than me. This person's so much better than me. Like I wish I could be like this person. I know a lot of those people and they don't make any money. Like they are just really good at talking on the internet. uh, I think a lot of people don't have time to do that too. Like they're too busy running their company and taking care of customers and dealing with the parts that I'm not saying everybody who's like great at marketing is like a fraud or something, but I think there are people that are really obsessed with how they look on the internet and how they appear to other people. And those people have this like entrepreneurial spirit, but like actual entrepreneurs, they are people that are doing the work. Like they're hardcore taking care of customers. They're trying to get better they're trying to get better at running their business. They have this obsession with making money and hitting profitability because it like changes their lives and the lives of their employees. And they don't care if they don't care if they didn't get a post out if it means that they took care of what they need to take care of. So I think it's just this difference of like, do I want people to see me as an entrepreneur or do I actually want to be one? And sometimes those aren't mutually exclusive, but sometimes it can be.
So doing the work is usually what for you is kind of that difference between entrepreneur versus entrepreneurial, where you can see like that person, they either need to be like really high output, unique in something to be able, like I'll take Gary Vee as an example. Like, there's only one for a reason. It's not easy at all to get to that degree of running that many companies and doing that much social media content and to have the time to do it and have the time to run the companies. Like those things are just not easy at all. And if someone is
Yeah.
aspirational to do that, there's a reason why no one else has kind of did the same thing. On the other side, I'll take someone like Imam Ghazi. Like looks way too good for everything. You kind of hear the shady stuff all the time, but the lifestyle, you kind of look at just the lifestyle, like, okay, if this was like a magazine, cool. It would be a very entertaining magazine. Flip through these pictures, flip through these stories, sounds really cool. But the actual application all the time of like do a personal brand. I know so many people that will never get in front of a camera or do social media posts at all. Multi-million dollar companies, it's not the one thing. No, it is the work ethic. It is they see things in a they see that they notice opportunities. And for me, that is the difference. When if I say entrepreneur versus entrepreneurial, it's not just doing the work. In my mind, it's they see the opportunities, but they see opportunities not for the sake of chasing and closing any single thing that is in front of them. It's more like I see the opportunity in this person. If this works out, and if I give them the shot, what they're telling me they want to achieve, it can be achieved here. It will grow them and scale the company at the same time. Because I do think at one point, when we go back to not having enough time, as a CEO, eventually just become head of HR. That's my opinion. Eventually,
Yeah.
switch the titles because you want to find the best people, you want to retain the right people, and if someone needs to leave, you do it the right way. If someone wants to grow and leave the company, you do that in the best way possible because these are the things that move it to the next level because it will get you
Yeah.
there. It will like systems and processes and SOPs will get you there, but eventually you start to kick in with people. Now, we talk about systems and process and people. We have to now trickle into 2025 and AI. Have you noticed changes on those conversations that the groups are having? What are their thoughts and feelings around AI?
It's a great question. I think it's one of those things that everyone knows they can take advantage of, and not a lot of people know how. We have some people in Thrive that are great at it, and they will suggest prompts into ChatGPT that I'm like, this is profound. Like I wouldn't have never, I would have never thought of putting this much detail to get this output, and there's it comes naturally to them. And we have people in here who are like, that was written by AI. I can spot it a mile away. Like these words, these phrases, this syntax, this format. And some people are like, oh, I thought it was great. Like I had no idea, or like I didn't know that I could automate this. I didn't know I could take my hours out and replace it with AI in this way. So it is coming up a lot more that particularly this year and tail end of last year, like ChatGPT being the most vocal one, but there's so many of these like revenue based softwares now that can do all these very different things that people are like, what do you mean I could AI voice over mass market LinkedIn message? Like, I didn't think you could do that. It's like, well, this tool you can for $19 a month. So I think people are just navigating like what's right to do, what's ethical to do, what's the best way I can do it without like ruining my brand. You've got conversations in here of people being like, I'm a bad writer. I use it to write. I think it's like really helpful. And people on the other side of that coin are like, yeah, and it like tarnishes your brand because I can like tell it's ChatGPT and it doesn't sound like you. And I think people are just trying to navigate like, how do I use this and get the most out of it while also not like screwing myself over in the
Yeah.
process.
I feel like if in the early days, it was definitely early days, 2022. It was definitely very noticeable. But now the problem that I see is if I give you a feed of 50 pieces, it will be like you need to stop and look at it to try to
Yeah.
start to notice. It's not that easy. If you're just scrolling and it catches something, something catches your eye, you take like 2, 3 seconds. Is this real? Is it not? And the new stuff with like Google View where the videos, I'm like, if I didn't tell you, if I just give you, and again, a big sample, not two or three, yeah, out of two or three, if you stop and look, you will, but at 50, you scroll through, you will not hit the AI because it's getting really, really accurate. But I think
100%.
what I think more and more, um, the way that I think businesses, or at least this is how I use it, it's the research part that let's say you have your accounts payable receivable, and let's say your accountant is not available because you emailed him twice and he has a shit ton of other things to do. You can take those, ask the question, you will get the answer, and it's based on your data. It's based on your knowledge base. So I'm not trying to do generative, I'm trying to do research. I can be like, okay, this is Eric. I talked to Eric. Give me a bunch of stuff. I want to see who this person is because I can do the research manually, or I can just load a couple of things here. Let's say Notebook LM, put a bunch of stuff there about one person or books or PDFs or whatever, and it will give me that research piece to start with. The generative part, I see I see the arguments, but I'm it's too close now. Before it was really really noticeable, and now people do know they need to tweak it. Almost everyone. There's not a single person that like press the button publishes. They do go over
Yeah.
it, tweak it, and change it. Do you see? I've heard a couple of emails. These are like massive CEOs that send those emails that said they will not hire until you prove them AI can't do it. Is there a sentiment like that in the groups that you have?
I actually don't think so. And I don't know if it's because we're like more service-based businesses than tech, but people are on the opposite side of that coin. I think people in here would rather hire like they're again like not totally understanding of how to leverage AI the right way. Um, I think the idea that like you could outsource a copywriter, like instead of hiring a copywriter, you could do this would be like foreign to a lot of people in here. Like they just would never think about it like that. Um, and maybe it's just because it's like a people business and people are talking about people constantly. Um, it seems like folks are thinking, how do I hire for this role and then use AI to help make their job easier versus replace? But I know people that are thinking about it as replace entirely as well. So
It's a cool differentiation because it's true for B2B, because I have service based. There is no implementation to replace people. It's just taking it to the next level in the research, in the automation part. The generative stuff, not really, because at least not today. And not today. Um, who knows in the future, but because you know that it's people that make that connection and you have to build it on a solid foundation. If everything that I did, I've had these conversations when I don't know if this happened to you. You book a call. Let's say something you saw a cool. Let's go with the course. You booked a call to talk with someone. Email is from one person. The reminder flips to another person. The reminder of the reminder says, "Hey, this is my co-founder," or "This is the right person." So I'm like, this is like three people now in this email chain that I need to. So who's the person I'm going to talk at the end? And at the end, you do have a third or fourth person. You start talking about their automation process. You start to understand, okay, this is some sort of automation. Three of the four people don't really exist. They are just avatars and names. And that in B2B, like maybe in SaaS, because you couldn't care less because it's software. But in B2B, if you're sending a profile and you say Veronica is the head of finance and like, does she exist? Not really. In it just doesn't, you can't build a relationship on solid, like he has to have a solid foundation. And it feels like your
yep.
service-based businesses are at this stage early adopters. The early adopters will only take it. The other ones are not really thinking of applying AI because it's more hurtful for the business than being successful. If
Yeah.
if you're um if you're redoing Thrive 2.0, what were the changes you would make in the beginning? If you go back in time, you're like, I know this, I know the future, I've seen it, I can go back in time and I can build Thrive 2.0. What were the changes you would make?
Great question. I think I am quick to want to hire people to problems that I don't know are problems yet, or like you just move too fast with them. Our first company, we only hired contractors and then grew them into full-time roles. Or like hired and made hiring mistakes in like both my businesses. So I think I would do that. I would just like hire contract workers to do specific things and grow, see if those needs became bigger needs before like really building out the team before I like knew what I wanted. I'm
Mhm.
like big team person. I'm very, very visionary in that way. And like I think having a team is cool. And I just always want it sooner than I probably need it. So I think just slowing down that way is like really helpful on the product and experience piece. If you had asked me when we first started, I think I would have assumed people cared about things that they just don't care about. Like, oh man, wouldn't it be cool to have this super sexy member portal dashboard where people can read all these things and like learn all this stuff about each other and it's like really intuitive and it's fast. People just care about meeting awesome people and like having really good conversations. And I know other groups who have that. Like they spent so much money on these portals. They're like, no one logs into it. Like no one uses it. But like they'll get on the phone with somebody that you intro them to immediately. And I think in the age where like tech is like very popular, this business can still feel like superhuman and super like normal person connection. And I almost now I think about it like I'm building a town. Like I'm the mayor of a little town, and every person I admit would I want to live down the road from them. And how would people receive news in a town through a newspaper? And like how would they learn about things that are happening? And how would the rituals and cultures of a town like make it fun and cool to live there? None of that stuff is like super crazy or innovative. It's like just very simple and very old school and nostalgic. And I would actually run the business that way. That's kind of where I'm at now, but it's not where I started.
That's right. And I finished the Lean Startup. Yes, I finished that book. And one of the things that he mentions in that book is if you ask your clients, he's like sometimes it's ego, sometimes it's assumptions. But if you don't do that, if you go and ask your clients, you will see where you need to put your resources. And I've done the same mistake. I spend so much time on making charts. So I can show the progress of connection messages that I've sent or show the progress of book calls. And if I give you a Google sheet that has all of that, 95% we're like, yeah, the charts are cool, but let's go to the Google sheet and go down name by name. And I've heard the
Yeah.
sentence like billion-dollar companies are made on Google Sheets or just basic tables like that. And like you, I thought it was like it needs to be polished. It needs to have this like really cool UI, but that's not why they're there. They're there for the the experience. They're there for the actual connection with people. It's more the UI is good and cool, but it's not the main thing. Eric, if someone heard this whole thing and they're like, "Man, this is fucking amazing, man. I want to do this." How did they get a hold of you? How did they get in touch? What are the next steps for them to do?
Great question. So our website is thrivers.co. There's a bunch of information on there about like just the application process and what we look for and what the value being in the group is. I'm super active on LinkedIn. I'll like almost always try to chat up a conversation with anybody that connects with me or vice versa. And a bunch of our members are active on there as well. I think a big part of being in a community is it's almost like scoping out a town that you want to move into. You want to like go visit it first and see, do I like the people here? Am I going to like this neighborhood that I'm going to live in? I think digital communities can be the same way. Like, I think it's important to know some of the people in the group and are you going to like it? And like, did I see something that made me want to spend time here? Because it's such a time investment more than anything. So I think just reach out, like go to our website or reach out to me directly, and I'm happy to make some intros. And if the vibe is right, happy to have a more detailed conversation about it.
Fantastic, Eric. Thank you so much for the time. Thank you so much for sharing all this information, and I wish you all the best. Keep connecting.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it.